The Cathar Imperium had been built on cruelty, oppression, and the subjugation of lesser species. They were a cancer on the galaxy for centuries. Their realm was vast and their power absolute. Pride was their currency. Cruelty was the only language they understood, and from their glistening orbital cities to the deepest minds of the conquered worlds, the Cathar mantra of might makes right was used to justify the myth that the Cathar are superior to all other races. Their once proud fleet, a force of utter devastation that would render entire worlds to ash, had just completed their latest conquest, a pale blue world called Terra, and their few colonies. Humanity had bravely fought with stubborn optimism and a resilience the Cathar hadn't encountered before. But as hard as humanity fought, they were doomed, and they ultimately fell to join the long list of other conquests as just another conquered race. Weeks after the pacification of Terra, the first cases of the blight began. At first, it was a strange lethargy among the labor castes. Then it became a persistent cough, followed by a rapid and agonizing deterioration, finally resulting in death. At first, the Imperium caste bureaucracy dismissed it as a minor inconvenience, a malady that must have been picked up from the humans during their conquest, and as it was only killing the lower caste, it was barely even noticed. But the blight suddenly exploded. Where reports of a few isolated cases were received, within weeks it was millions of cases daily. Millions died in the sprawling Cathar cities before finally the Empire's High Council acknowledged the disaster. Quarantines were enacted. Entire city blocks were purged and put to the torch. Medical facilities overflowed with the afflicted, the dead remaining unburied. Panic soon engulfed the Empire. The High Council, in their fear, sought a scapegoat to appease the citizenry. A cry went up across the Empire. The humans! It had to be the humans. What followed was an act of genocide so horrific, so shocking, that even some of the Cathar began to become disgusted by what was happening and questioning their place in the galaxy. The humans, slaughtered in their millions, were chased out of the Empire and left to die in the empty void of space. Their homeworld utterly destroyed in an act of pure spite. Yet, the blight only accelerated. It shrugged off Cathar medicine and defied their ruthless quarantines. It made a mockery of their military as it infected their conscripts and officers without prejudice as they carried back the disease to the core systems of the empire. And as the Cathar weakened, the subjugated races took note. The long, drawn-out hatred of murderous crimes unforgiven, the simmering, hate-filled wrath towards those that stole their freedoms finally saw their chance and finally rose up. One by one, the Cathar lost their conquered worlds, their once vaunted and feared fleets undermanned, with many of the crew the sick, were outmaneuvered, outthought, and systematically annihilated. The galaxy witnessed the fall of the once proud Cathar and rejoiced. The now triumphant freed races pushed them back, planet by planet, until they had nowhere else to go. The ships of the freed coalition pushing the Cathar all the way back to Cathar Prime. Isolated and alone, their population decimated and dwindling by the day, the Cathar faced extinction. Their pride, once the driving force behind the conquest of the galaxy, was shattered. In a final desperate act, their dying High Council broadcast a plea into the void, not a demand, but a brief, terrified message begging for help. The Emperor Theron himself, racked with coughs, whispered into the comms, "We were arrogant, and now we are dying. Forgive us. Help us." The galaxy listened, but it did not respond. The freed peoples remembered the crimes of the Cathar and the scars they had caused.
There were too many to count or forgive, and a warped sense of ironic justice settled over the galaxy. Let the Cathar reap what they sowed. Let them know misery and suffering devoid of hope. Let them die. Then, a single unfamiliar diplomatic vessel dropped out of warp near Cathar Prime. Its hull was emblazoned with a stylized blue globe wrapped by olive branches. Its weapons remained inactive. Its appearance was suddenly followed by a fleet of medical frigates and research ships, all bearing the same markings, the emblem of the humans. This caused a jolt of ice-cold dread to go straight down the collective backs of those surviving Cathar military personnel and civilians alike. "This is the human diplomatic vessel Hope," came a calm and clear voice over the comms, startling many Cathar who heard it. They had expected gloating and threats, not diplomacy. The Cathar were initially scared, but this soon changed to a sense of wary apathy as they awaited their fate. They could offer no resistance. But then, the human medical teams arrived. Covered in biohazard suits, they quickly set up hospitals, giving solace to the dying and hope to the sick. Human scientists set up sophisticated labs, working day and night, side by side with surviving Cathar researchers who still carried the weight of past atrocities, waited for the inevitable retribution. But there was no recrimination, no gloating, only the focused hum of centrifuges and the determined whispers of collaboration. Emperor Theron, once a figure of absolute power in the galaxy, now lay sick in a sterile human medical tent, his scales dulled by the blight, his breath shallow. He watched as a human doctor with kind eyes approached, adjusted his IV drip, and gave him a gentle pat of encouragement. "Doctor," he rasped, his voice a dry whisper. "Why? Why do you help us?" The doctor paused, her gaze meeting his. "Pardon, Emperor?" she asked. She leaned forward slightly, her voice softening. "In our darkest moments, yes," she said with sorrow in her voice. "But with every atrocity, every war, and every chain we forged, there were those who promised to be better, to do better. And at first, these promises were few and but a whisper. But passed down through generation after generation, it became something more. And as it became a philosophy which we wished to take with us to the stars, something we could strive towards, the embodiment of humanity. These values," she continued, her voice even and steady, "compassion over revenge, empathy over vengeance, and common ground over war. These ideals, Emperor, are what make us human. They are what spur us on to help the sick and dying. As we have made countless mistakes in our past, and we have learned from them, and we promised ourselves and the galaxy that we would be better and would do better. We didn't save you because you deserved saving. We saved you because we needed to. Because to stand by and watch a species perish, even one that has caused us so much pain and anguish, it would be to betray everything we are as a people and what we stand for." Theron lay silent for a long moment, the doctor's words hanging in the air. He felt deep regret and shame as he mulled them over. The words seemed to drill to the very core of his soul. He had expected condemnation, even defiance, but this quiet, unwavering principle made him weep openly. "Thank you," was all he could say, and it didn't seem enough. For months they worked. Humanity's vast knowledge of viral epidemiology, their unique biological resilience, and their sheer, stubborn refusal to give up, merged with the Cathar's sophisticated bioengineering, started to make headway. It was an agonizing and painstaking process, fraught with many setbacks, but slowly and tediously they made headway. And eventually a breakthrough, a viable medication which cured the sick, and a vaccine to inoculate the healthy. The blight, once an unstoppable force of nature, began to recede. News of the cure spread to the wider galaxy like wildfire, and of humanity's unprecedented intervention. As it rippled through the galaxy, the freed races reacted with a mixture of shock and renewed fury. How dare humanity save their oppressors? This was not the justice they sought. This was a betrayal, and one that would be exacted in blood. The fleets of the freed people's coalition readied for war, vengeance and wrath spurring them on, and when they set out for Cathar Prime, they had one singular goal: to finish what the Blight had started. But when they arrived, a single human ship stood silently in the path of the vast, vengeful armada, its weapons offline. It slowly approached the fleet. "Stand down, please," came a human voice over the comm channels. It radiated a strange calm. "The Cathar are recovering. The Blight is contained. Their debts are immense to all of us. Their crimes incalculable. But their suffering has also been profound. And now they stand at the crossroads between redemption and damnation."
The fleet commander, a veteran of countless battles against the Cathar, scoffed. "Redemption? There can be no redemption. They slaughtered our kind. They enslaved us, just as they did to you. Justice demands their eradication." "Justice demands accountability, not blood," the human voice replied calmly. "Their empire's gone and will never recover. Their pride is broken, and they are a species brought to the brink of annihilation by their own actions, their own hubris, and a plague that nearly consumed them. We saved them because we do not want to become what they were, but out of a belief that even the most broken of us can be mended." The air was heavy with tension. Centuries of hate now being challenged by noble ideals long forgotten by the freed races who suffered under the yoke and cruelty of the Cathar. And as the freed peoples looked upon the small, defiant human ship, they considered the impossible act of mercy from humanity and the courage it must have taken to swallow that hatred and anger to help their persecutors. And then a different kind of debate started. This wasn't betrayal or weakness from a naive race as they had imagined. This was a species that had faced down their greatest oppressors, endured unimaginable cruelty and hardship. They still helped others, either those that had wronged them so grievously. Slowly, one by one, the energy signatures of the vengeful fleet dwindled. Their ships turned away. Their hatred had not vanished, but humanity had shown them a path they hadn't considered. A path where justice might, just might, someday include forgiveness. The Cathar, watching from their healing world, saw the human ship remain, quietly standing guard, safeguarding the impossible second chance the Cathar had been granted. The stars, once filled with their cries of conquest, now held a new, fragile promise of something more.